For decades, India's Army, Navy and Air Force have fought under three separate command structures. Each service has had its own operational commanders, its own planning process and its own chain of command. But that could change soon. After nearly 20 years of deliberations, India is now on the verge of implementing what could become the biggest military reform since independence, the creation of integrated theatre commands. The proposal is expected to be placed before Defence Minister Rajnath Singh by the Chief of Defence Staff, General N.S. Raja Subramani. So what exactly changes? India's military operates through 17 separate operational commands, 7 of the Army, 7 of the Air Force and 3 of the Navy. Under the proposed system, these service-specific commands will gradually give way to integrated theatre commands, where a single commander will control the Army, Navy and Air Force assets assigned to a particular theatre of operation. In simple terms, if a conflict breaks out along the western border, just one theatre commander will direct land, air and maritime operations under a single battle plan. The proposal envisages 3 major theatre commands: a Northern Theatre Command focused on China, a Western Theatre Command for the Pakistan front, and a Maritime Theatre Command responsible for securing India's interests across the Indian Ocean region. The objective is modern wars are no longer fought separately on land, at sea or in the air. Today's battlefields combine missiles, drones, cyber warfare, electronic warfare, satellites and artificial intelligence, all operating simultaneously. However, the reform has not been without challenges. The Indian Air Force has consistently argued that its relatively limited fighter fleet should remain centrally controlled rather than permanently allocated to different theatres. There have also been complex discussions over command authority, logistics, strategic assets and inter-service coordination. Even so, much of the groundwork has now been completed and the proposal is set to have the backing of the military leadership. So the question is, will theatre commands make India's armed forces faster, stronger and better prepared for future wars? Now, without wasting any more time, let me introduce my panel and we will have a sort of a longish conversation. Lieutenant General Shaukin Chauhan, former DG Assam Rifles, thank you so much sir. Air Commodore Dr. Ashwinder Singh Bahal, thank you sir. And Captain Alok Bansal, Executive Vice President of India Foundation, thank you so much sir. Let me begin with General Chauhan. I'll go to then Dr. Ashwinder Singh Bahal and then to Captain Bansal. General Chauhan, my question is theaterization an Indian reality? Let me begin this conversation like this. Does India need theaterization?
Good afternoon, Karthik. Of course it needs. If we have to fight any kind of war, we have to fight it together. And we know for certain that we're going to fight in different theatres. That's for certain. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We also know for certain that at the present moment, the Northern Command was looking after both the Pakistan front and the Chinese front. The Eastern Command was looking after the Chinese front. The Western Army was only looking after the Pakistan front. That is as far as the Army is concerned. And so it was similarly with the Air Force and Navy, looking after separate capsules of their own. The idea is that any future war gives you very little time to react. It also gives you just nanoseconds for decisions. So you cannot wait for a decision to come from outside. You have to have a single theatre fighting a single war at the same time with his resources so that he can put them fully into battle. The more we delay the decision-making process, the more are the chances that your entire system will break up. So it's definitely an Indian reality. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Okay, so it's an Indian reality. Dr. Bahal, your opening comments. Why do we need theaterization of our military, and what has been the perspective of Air Force on it?
Very nice, sir. Give me a few minutes on this because this is a longish type of answer. First thing is, there is no doubt, I totally agree with the general to say that there is an immediate requirement of theaterization, primarily for two reasons. Till now, we have been having joint planning because I was myself part of College of Air Warfare as well as of operational commands where I did the planning. The planning is being carried out independently and it is a joint planning, which means the Army, Navy give their requirements and we try to dovetail it within the requirements, within the operational philosophy of the IAF or of the three services. So, first and foremost requirement is integrated planning. Second is because that enhances the speed of decision making also. The second and very important thing is that today the wars are being fought in multi domains, right? From space, air, land, sea, subsurface. And when we integrate all the elements, it is the best element because the asset now forms part of the theater commander, which is the best asset to be utilized to take on the particular target system with the most cost effectiveness and with greater efficiency and effectiveness. So every asset is part now of the theater command as that has been allocated to that theater. The third and important thing is that when we are carrying this out, the aim is to quickly make the enemy dysfunctional and therefore focus more on functional paralysis rather than focusing on extreme destruction like the American Air Forces and the American warfare does, and at the same time achieving the aim and objectives of our own forces with minimum collateral damage. Fourth thing is that we require air defense, not to allow our own assets to get shot down. It could be fratricide on ground, it could be fratricide in air or on sea. So prevent fratricide, it is extremely important for theaterization. Last thing which is extremely important for this before I go on to the Air Force view is that it is extremely important that sensor to shooter time gets reduced to the minimum, and that can only get reduced to the minimum if there is one decision maker. So whilst accepting all this, and let me tell you this, I was the first person to write a paper on integrated theater commands in 2006-7, which was published in India Strategic Journal, and one of the first few to write on this and compare the American 11 combatant commands, 5 theater commands of the Chinese today, but earlier there were 7 military regions, and also the Australian theater commands, and then come out with the solution that was best suited for the Indian contingent. Now, what is the problem? I'll tell you the problem areas. Okay. The first problem is the first CDS that became was General Bipin Rawat. We are having a third CDS, currently General NS Raja Subramani. And earlier, when we used to have integrated chiefs of staff committee and you had chairman chiefs of staff committee, we had a rotation where you had the Army, Navy, Air Force come in rotation, whoever was the senior most, and all three of them, and yet we won the 1971 war and we won the Kargil war also. Now, and we were able to evict. But why is it that 3 CDS have gone through and not the Air Force or naval officer has become? And are we saying that we don't trust our own Air Force and Navy commanders? Are we saying that they are less capable than the Army? And as you can see, the way I discuss with you major issues which belong to the 3 services, including the ballistic missiles and electronic warfare, cyber warfare, that every officer, every commander in the armed forces is as capable, and it is not just the Army that is capable. They are capable, no doubt about it. But so is the Indian Air Force commanders, and so is the Indian naval commanders. And this creates doubts and suspicions into the mind. Is there a hidden agenda? Why every time there is a army officer who's become the CDS? The second and important point is that over a period of time, there has been a reduction in the fighter squadron strength. 42 was authorized. It got reduced to 39 and a half squadrons, and in the last 12 years, it's come down to 29 squadrons, out of which there are a total of 12 squadrons that are obsolete, virtually obsolete with 30, 35 years. Remember, we were discussing the Jaguar accidents and other accidents that are taking place. Now, when we are having a strength of just barely 17 effective squadrons, out of which 2 are Mark 1 LCA, which is not right now fully capable to take on a 4th or a 5th generation warfare, we are looking at a much reduced strength of fighters and also of other assets. And when we going to break it down into theaters, remember, If there is a Northern Command theater, it is going to be the Chinese threat. If it's a Western Command, it's going to be Air Force. It is being said that Northern Command will be the Army. It is being said Western Command will be the Air Force, and Maritime Command will be the Navy.
Okay.
Now, which sounds very logical to me because of the nuclearized environment and the predominance of the lead services in this area. But I want to say one thing. Even though there may be a Chinese threat and we are having a Chinese war, but still we have to have deterrent forces being deployed for Pakistan, and similarly for vice versa also. This means that as it is, we are having reduced strength. Now we are going to reduce it further, and this deterrence versus punitive threat that we are going to carry out the attacks or going to carry out combined integrated operations. But there is a solution, and next time when you come up, I will discuss with you the solution which I had said 20 years back, but is still not been brought into place.
Okay, Captain Bansal, your thoughts? Last time I was discussing this with General Chauhan. We agreed on one point that though theaterization is important, but the inception is lodged in the globalization of the American military, where it's like Marine Expeditionary Forces, where they required everything at one point of time. So does it cater to the Indian reality? Is it a response to what the PLA is doing in terms of theaterization? Your opening comments, sir.
See, firstly, as India rises and India emerges as not only a regional power but strives to become a global power, theaterization is an inevitability that you cannot deny. In fact, though I have serious problems with the way theaterization is being processed, having just 3 commands, I think it's stupid, actually. You can have one theater for Pakistan, but having one theater for North, ranging from Jammu Kashmir to Arunachal, to my mind is stupid, actually. There needs to be also an Eastern theater. You don't know, because when you are trying to become a global or a regional power, you may have threats emanating from anywhere. You may be required to move in. Similarly, in the maritime arena, Andaman and Nicobar should be a theater by itself, actually, because not only are you taking a point of view of defense, but Indian Navy as a net security provider, and now Indian military forces should be the net security provider. So you would probably need one for Bay of Bengal, one for Arabian Sea, and one maybe for expeditionary forces. Having said that, the problems as far as theaterization are concerned are, firstly, the dissimilarity in sizes. Today, Army is many times larger than Navy and Air Force combined. Now, you can't you can't find fault with that, because the way India's military has evolved, we have had problems of insurgency, we have had borders, threats across land borders, and as a result, Army has grown. Now, what is required is that you need to do some sort of a thing. So maybe we should consider making Marine Corps as well as airborne infantry. That could be done, so that some amount of, I'm not trying to say that the forces would become equal in size or something, but at least some sort of a similarity comes. I am totally against having this Western with Army, Northern with Army, Western with Air Force, and Maritime with Navy. I think this sort of a system or a rotational system is absolutely wrong. Even in CDS, it has to be by selection, and selection of the best men. There can never be that only Army will have the Northern Command or Air Force. This is absolutely stupid. The third problem, and the biggest problem, is that ideas are good, but the implementation gets spoiled. You say CDS was created. Under CDS, there was supposed to be an IFS officer. To date, they have not been able to position one, because the bureaucracy wouldn't accept it. Now, if you actually want to have theater commands like American, US Pacific Command, US Atlantic Command, you should have a diplomat, you should have people from other services also functioning under the commander, which in India, it will not happen, because
Mr. Bansal, before theaterization, do we require reforms in the civil-military relationship?
Undoubtedly, that is of course a crying need that nobody can deny. Is there anybody who says that that is not needed? That is needed, but that requires an enormous political will and control over the bureaucracy, which I think is not easily feasible. But having said that, when you are talking of theaterization, I think creating just 3 theaters, to my mind, is not right. And what happens when you theaterize? What happens? You created an Andaman and Nicobar Command. None of the services are willing to provide it assets. Only Navy has some assets. Air Force has not increased one bit. Army has not increased. The one brigade which existed, and that brigade is also depleted brigade. So that's how it has remained. So unless, of course, you have the services mindset also has to change. Today, a service officer has hardly any understanding of the other services. You do staff college, you do some courses, that's about it all. But does an army officer know how does a ship function, or does a naval officer go and on ground? Admiral Vishnu Bhagwat at one stage had started a system whereby a naval officer on commissioning used to go and spend time in Jammu and Kashmir with army units. No, that sort of some sort of a cross attachment is required. There are a lot of naval pilots who go and serve with Air Force and others. But otherwise, the basic understanding of army tactics, the
Okay.
naval tactics, is still lacking, and that factor is a very, very major issue. And while theaterization is absolutely welcome, but we need to have firstly far more theaters. We also need to have integration not only of the three services, we also need to have certain civilian the defense account chap should come under it, the foreign service, because now if the maritime arena, if you are moving around, you need to have a diplomat to understand how to deal with the
Okay.
things, because at sea you will be meeting ships from other countries.
Okay, okay. Let me also introduce Wing Commander Dr. Bhushan Devan, sir. Thank you so much for joining me at this short notice. Your opening comments on theaterization, which is about to happen. So my question is, have we arrived at the right time? Do we really need this sort of a theaterization? Can there be an Indian version, subcontinental version of theaterization? Do we really need an American version or the PLA version of theaterization? Can there be a Bharatiya version of theaterization? Let me put it in a very simplistic way, sir.
Yeah, possibly we are behind schedule because this matter has been in the works for the last 20 years, and we will have to have our own version because our problems, our issues are unique compared to anybody else in the world. Of course, the U.S. services are worldwide because they have got interests where they go on all over the world for their work. But in our case, even when localized within the Indian subcontinent, we have different kind of terrain, we have different kind of issues. Therefore, there is bound to be a change thinking, and it will evolve. As of today, this is the first time that we have started thinking about the theatre command, which is a welcome move. There have been a lot of discussions and divergent views, and I think particularly the Air Force at one point of time was much against this concept because the resources are limited. But considering today the space technology, the satellites, the missiles, everything is now showing the concept of the warfare itself has changed. And assets which particularly used to be part of the Air Force are now with all the three services. The Navy itself has got the aviation corps, plus they've got the drones, missiles, so has the Army. So it makes sense for us to go for a theatre command. As one of them pointed out, that there need probably be another jugaad into this, probably Eastern theatre, considering that today the Eastern theatre also has become very important. And till date, we had only one theatre command in the Andaman and Nicobar, which did not really have much teeth. But I guess now with our concept of change of our mindset, and at least to be in the subcontinent a force to reckon with, which we are today, it will be an evolving situation and a welcome move. And maybe we will consider our own unique situation, and maybe another command or two might come into force as and when we have the resources. It will be a challenge, but it's an evolving situation, and I am sure the thinkers will come out with some more suggestions as we go along.